History is a wheel that turns with a terrifying and bloody precision. It grinds forward, crushing the naive and elevating the ruthless, repeating its lessons until we finally have the courage to learn them. In every generation, across every continent, the story remains the same. When a great light appears to lead the people out of the suffocating darkness of oppression, a shadow immediately rises to extinguish it. We know the ancient stories by heart. We know of the Messiah who walked with 12 disciples, sharing bread and wine, only to be sold for 30 pieces of silver by the one who sat closest to him. We know the story of Patrice Lumumba, the fire of the Congo, whose location was whispered to the executioners by his own countrymen. And we know, with a pain that still throbs in the heart of every African, the story of Thomas Sankara. He was not murdered by a white colonizer in a pith helmet. He was not struck down by a foreign army storming the gates. He was murdered by his best friend, his brother in arms, the man he trusted with his life, Blaise Compaoré. The tragedy of Africa has never truly been the strength of the enemy outside the gates. The walls of the continent are thick, and the spirit of the people is strong. The tragedy has always been, and remains today, the treachery of the enemy within. The one who smiles when you smile, the one who eats from your bowl, and the one who holds the knife behind his back while he embraces you. Today, as the red dust of the Sahel rises to signal a new dawn, the script is being rewritten, but the characters remain hauntingly familiar. Captain Ibrahim Traoré stands as the new light of West Africa, when he carries the hopes of millions who have been asleep for too long. He wears the red beret not as a fashion statement, but as a crown of thorns and a symbol of sacrifice. But look closely at the map. Look at the borders that surround Burkina Faso. Who is threatening him? Who is cutting off the electricity to his hospitals, plunging newborns into darkness? Who is closing the ports to starve his people? Who is freezing the assets of the central bank to ensure the soldiers cannot be paid? It is not the soldiers of France. It is not the Marines of America. It is his own African brothers. It is the leaders of the neighboring states. It is the Judas of West Africa. Before we go deeper into this dark web of betrayal, if you are someone who believes that the truth must be spoken, no matter how uncomfortable it is, I ask you to take a moment to subscribe to this channel. We are building a community of eyes that can see and ears that can hear. Join us so you do not miss the history that is unfolding right before us. In this chapter of the revolution, we must confront the uncomfortable reality that the greatest danger to the Alliance of Sahel States does not come from the high-rise offices of Paris or Washington. It comes from the presidential palaces of Abidjan, of Abuja, of Dakar, and of Cotonou. It comes from the men who look like Traoré, who speak the same languages as Traoré, whose skin is as dark as Traoré's, but whose souls have been bought and paid for. The spiritual diagnosis of this betrayal is ancient. It is the spirit of Esau, the brother who sold his birthright for a bowl of soup. Yet these leaders have sold the birthright of African sovereignty, the dignity of their ancestors, and the future of their children for the soup of Western aid, for the validation of foreign embassies, and for the preservation of their own personal power. They look at Ibrahim Traoré, and they do not see a hero. They see a mirror. And in that mirror, they see their own ugliness reflected back at them. Traoré's courage exposes their cowardice. His poverty exposes their obscene wealth. His love for the people exposes their disdain for the poor. And because he exposes them, they hate him. They hate him with a passion that burns hotter than the hatred of the colonizer. The colonizer hates Traoré because he loses money. The African traitor hates Traoré because he loses his mask. Let us look at the mechanics of this modern betrayal. So when Traoré rose to power, the first instinct of the neighboring leaders was not to support him, not to ask how they could help stabilize a nation overrun by terrorists. Their first instinct was to suffocate him. They gathered in their air-conditioned conference rooms, wearing their expensive European suits, and they signed papers that declared an economic war on one of the poorest nations on earth. They called it sanctions. But let us call it what it really is: a siege. They stopped medicines from crossing the border, knowing that children would die of malaria. They stopped fuel tankers, knowing that ambulances would not run. They cut off the banking codes, knowing that families would not be able to buy bread. These were acts of violence, committed by Africans against Africans. Why? It was because the masters in the West snapped their fingers and the puppets danced. There is a terrifying prophecy circulating among the griots of the region, a warning that has been passed down through the bloodlines. The one who eats with you is the one who will poison your cup. This warning is flashing red right now. Intelligence reports whisper of secret meetings held in luxury hotels in neighboring capitals. In these meetings, foreign intelligence agents sit across the table from African officials, plotting the downfall of the Alliance of Sahel States. They discuss logistics. They discuss infiltration. They discuss the price of a bullet. They discuss how to weaponize poverty to make the people turn against their leader. It is a heavy thing to realize that your brother is your enemy. If this reality angers you, well, if you feel the injustice of it in your bones, hit the like button on this video. Let the algorithm know that we are watching, and let the world know that we see through the lies. The Judas leaders of West Africa are walking on thin ice, but they are too blinded by their own arrogance to hear the cracking sound beneath their feet. They do not realize that the world has changed. They are operating from an old playbook, the playbook of the 1990s, where a leader could suppress his people and serve foreign interests in the dark. But today, the lights are on. They do not realize that by attacking Traoré, they are radicalizing their own populations. The youth of Ivory Coast, the youth of Nigeria, the youth of Senegal, they are watching. They hold their phones in their hands, and they see Traoré on TikTok. They hear his speeches on WhatsApp, but they see a man who eats with his soldiers, who sleeps on a thin mattress, who speaks the truth without fear. And then they look up at their own presidents, old men sleeping in meetings, repeating the talking points of the IMF, disconnected from the suffering of the street. The contrast is fatal. Traoré knows who the Judas is. You can see it in his eyes when he attends the summits. On the rare occasions he leaves his country. He does not smile with them. He does not embrace them with the warmth of a brother. He maintains the distance of a man who knows that a hug can be a tactical maneuver to check for a knife. He has learned the bloody lesson of 1987. Thomas Sankara made the fatal mistake of projecting his own integrity onto others. He believed that because he loved Blaise Compaoré, Blaise Compaoré loved him. When he believed that the bond of brotherhood was stronger than the lure of power. Traoré does not make this mistake. He studies history not as a collection of dates, but as a survival manual. He knows that the spirit of Judas is opportunistic. It seeks the weak point. It seeks the moment of relaxation. That is why he trusts only the people and the ancestors. That is why he has armed the civilians, the volunteers for the defense of the homeland. He understands that a leader protected only by a palace guard can be betrayed, but a leader protected by the entire population is invincible. But just as Judas met a grim fate, hanging alone in a field of blood, so too does a spiritual law govern the fate of the traitor. Betrayal carries a heavy karmic debt. It is a boomerang that always returns to shatter the thrower. Oh, look at the history of those who betrayed the African Revolution. Look at Mobutu Sese Seko, who betrayed Lumumba. He ruled for decades in a palace of gold, but he died in exile, rotting from cancer. His stolen billions unable to buy him a single extra hour of life. His name cursed by history. Look at Blaise Compaoré. He ruled for 27 years, celebrated by the West as a statesman. But where is he now? He was chased out of his country by his own people, who burned his parliament to the ground. He lives his final days in exile, looking over his shoulder, stripped of his honor, living in fear and shame. The Judas leaders of today are buying themselves the same fate. They think they are secure because they have the backing of foreign military bases. They think they are safe because they have specialized police forces, but they forget the most important variable in the equation: the spirit of the people. When the spirit wakes up, no army can suppress it. I want to ask you a question, and I want you to answer it honestly in the comments below. Who do you think is the greatest traitor to the African cause today? Who are the leaders that say one thing to their people but do another behind closed doors? Leave their names in the comments. Let us create a record of those who stood on the wrong side of history. The spiritual battle we are witnessing is intense. The traitors are using dark arts, propaganda, lies, and economic sabotage to break the spirit of the Burkinabe, Malian, and Nigerian people. They want the people to get hungry so they will turn on their leaders. They want to prove that freedom is too expensive, that dignity costs too much. They want the African to believe that he is destined to be a beggar, that he cannot survive without the generosity of the master. But they have miscalculated. They forgot that Ibrahim Traoré is protected by the shield of the righteous. Every time they try to isolate him, he finds new allies. They closed the ports of ECOWAS, thinking he would suffocate. Instead, he turned his gaze to the east and forged new partnerships with Russia, with Iran, with Turkey. They cut off the Western banking systems, thinking he would go bankrupt. Instead, he began to stockpile gold, realizing that the true wealth of the nation was in its soil, not in a digital ledger in Paris. The more they squeeze him, the harder he becomes. Like a diamond, he is being forged under their pressure. The tragedy of Judas was not just that he betrayed Jesus, but that he did it for so little. 30 pieces of silver. It was the price of a slave. And what have these African leaders gained for their treachery? What is their 30 pieces of silver? A few more years of power? A pat on the head from the French president? A visa for their children to study in London or New York? A secret bank account in Switzerland? It is a cheap price for an eternal soul. It is a pathetic exchange for the destiny of a continent. To the enemies within, the message from the spiritual realm is clear. The silver you collected will burn your hands. The table is turning. The youth of Africa are waking up, and they know your names. They know who signed the sanctions. They know who called for the invasion. They know who whispered to the foreign generals. The Alliance of Sahel States, AES, represents the antidote to this poison. It is the anti-Judas pact. It is a brotherhood forged in the fire of necessity. When Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger stand back to back, they eliminate the blind spot where the knife usually enters. They have realized that they cannot trust the old structures. ECOWAS, once a dream of unity, has become a weapon of division. The African Union, housed in a building paid for by foreigners, often speaks with a foreign tongue. So they are building something new, something raw, something real. Ibrahim Traoré is not just fighting for a country. He is fighting to exorcise the spirit of Judas from the African continent. He is fighting to prove that an African leader can live with honor and die with dignity. And he is fighting to break the cycle of betrayal that has kept the black man on his knees for 400 years. There is a story from the Bible where the enemies of the prophet Daniel conspired to have him thrown into the lion's den. They thought that the lions would tear him apart. They sealed the stone and went home to celebrate. But when they returned in the morning, Daniel was alive. The lions had not touched him. The king then ordered that the conspirators, the traitors, be thrown into the pit. And before they even hit the ground, the lions devoured them. The Sahel is the lion's den. The traitors thought that by throwing Traoré into the pit of terrorism and sanctions, he would be destroyed. They thought the lions of poverty and war would eat him alive. But he is still standing. He has tamed the lions. And now, the conspirators are standing at the edge of the pit, looking down, and they are beginning to feel the gravity pulling them in. The kiss of betrayal has been offered. But this time, the son of the soil did not lean in to accept it. He stepped back. He drew his line in the sand. And on one side stands the Alliance of Sahel States, united in brotherhood, covered by the dust of the earth and the glory of the ancestors. On the other side stands the crumbling house of the traitors, built on sand, funded by foreign coin, waiting for the inevitable storm. The rooster is about to crow. The night of deception is ending. And when the sun rises over the savannah, the faces of the betrayers will be revealed for all the world to see. They will have their money, but they will have no home. They will have their power, but they will have no peace. But if you stand with the Alliance, if you stand with the truth, and if you refuse to let the Spirit of Judas win this time, make sure you share this video. Send it to your family. Send it to your friends. Send it to the doubters. The algorithm tries to hide the truth, but we are the signal that cannot be jammed. The ancestors are watching. The world is watching. And the traitor, he is watching too. And for the first time in a long time, he is afraid. History will record that in the year of the awakening, the kiss of death failed. The target refused to die. And the revolution, purified by the fire of betrayal, became unstoppable.